Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dadsigner podcast. I'm your host, Michael Smith, and today I am joined by Adam Trest. Hello, Adam. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Michael. Thanks for having me.
For sure. Adam and I met briefly on Threads. Whether or not you love it, it's fine. But one of the things that stood out to me about Adam was I noticed he was a fine art painter, but the way he talks about it and the way he applies a lot of his work fits in really well with the podcast. And so don't write him off just because he paints and doesn't do pixel things. But Adam, yeah, why don't you tell folks a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and a bit about your family?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do consider myself a designer. Actually, when I go back to like education, I'm actually a classically trained portrait painter. And it was about 2 or 3 years after college that I realized like you're only ever really selling a portrait like one time. You might get the off chance where like there's a grandma that like gets jealous of a portrait that was painted and you might have to do another one. But like pretty much everything's a one-off. And so I learned really early in my career that if this was a job as an artist that I wanted to do, I did have to think about like streams of income and stuff. And so I diversifying and figuring out what that looked like included product design. And so I really started thinking about fine art from a different perspective where the original paintings that I do are sort of experiments. They help me understand pattern and texture and subject. And then they turn out to be, beautiful, tangible things as well. But then it's taking that to the next level and then finding the products that make the most sense for my brand and for my style. Yeah.
Nice. And that looks like, I think I saw online, it can look like hard goods like mugs. I saw some of your work on a bracelet,
Yeah.
fabric line coming out, all those types of things.
There's really no, like, I mean, everything that we have in our world is designed. Right? It's, easy to argue. And so I think whenever you look at what can art do for that, like, there's not anything we can't put a pattern on. And
Mm,
if it's well done and tastefully done, I think it can elevate the product as well. And so, there's a part of me that loves simplicity, but there's also a part of me that loves like maximalism. And I think, pattern on pattern on pattern. That's my favorite. Yeah, we do. I think I have lines of wallpaper, dishes, fabric, tile. I have a really cool tile line that I'm really proud of. We just launched a jewelry line with a local jewelry designer that's been really cool. Yeah, there's not a cap. It's really like what fits the brand. Let's try it. I'm always up.
yeah, that's cool. We'll jump into a couple stories in a minute, but tell us a little bit about your family as well.
Yeah, so I am a dad of three awesome girls. I am 100% girl dad. We don't do outside sports. We like gymnastics and dance and all the things. My kids are 11, 7, and 2 as of today. We're pushing 3 on that bottom one. But man, they keep me very busy. They keep me very humble. Don't understand my job at all, which is always fun. When they tell people that like I like to color, that's that conversation gets a little tricky sometimes. But yeah, it's being a dad to me. That's like the best job, and then getting to be an artist is like the pretty sweet second. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I I love being a girl dad, and so when other dads are girl dads, there's nothing wrong with boys, but there's just something special about those girls.
I like to tell people that like nothing in my house is broken, but my soul is a little bit. Like,
It's so true. Oh man, boys come in our house, and I'm just like, what is broken now?
how do you have anything? Like, how do their parents have anything?
Oh, like we did very little. What do they call that? Baby proofing.
Yeah.
We did very little. Um, and I can only imagine that it'd be very different if they were boys.
And it's also really wild. All of our friends only had girls. So, like, when all of our friends come over and bring their kids, there may be like for every 10 girls, there's like one boy. Like, poor thing. Like, I feel terrible for him because he's so overwhelmed. But it's just like we'll have, like a barbecue or something, and you turn around and it's like, why are there so many girls here? Like, this is why. So I'm always thankful when I meet people that have boys, because at least somebody out there is balancing us out. Because our street in Laurel, Mississippi is nothing but girls. Like, it's wild.
Yeah, so you have three girls, and then you have this art practice. Now, are you currently in a studio outside your house? Where do
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
go to do that?
I learned really quickly that I used to work from home for years. Had a studio that was like a spare bedroom that I had turned into my studio. And then COVID was a big year for us. A big year for obviously everyone, but I had actually stopped painting and gone back, and I was a teacher. Worked at a magnet school that was all arts integrated, and it was a really special place. But I worked there until we had to go home, and then I realized like I probably wasn't going to go back and be a teacher after that experience. And so I worked in my studio until it was sort of like we got the all clear and people started coming back to life. And then I rented a studio away from home. And I have a pretty unique situation too, where one of the galleries that represents me is owned by my wife, which is not a bad deal at all. So, my first studio outside of the house was actually in her gallery. And then the gallery moved, but I really liked the studio. So I took over the lease for that and lived in this cool, like, craftsman house. And then recently just moved my studio into our downtown. We live in a little town in Mississippi. And so we had a storefront now that it's kind of cool because a lot of the products and stuff that I design you can order all of them online, but there wasn't like a tangible place for you to see them in our town. And so now it's a pretty cool place where I actually have a storefront that I can open when I'm here, and people can come in and see the tile or see the wallpaper or the fabrics and like hold them and before they order them. Um, so it's kind of a dual edge. Like if I'm the week before a collection's coming out, like the door's locked, you're not coming in. Like I try to hide in the back, but most of the time it's pretty cool. Our town is kind of a little bit of a tourist destination, and so we have a lot of people coming through, and they like to come in and talk and share their story. I think that's what everybody wants to do is tell their story.
Yeah. Well, and did you and your wife meet through a gallery, through art, or were
No, no.
you already together and then she started
Yeah, we
representing
were
you?
already together, so we
Okay.
have had lots of lives up to this point. Whenever my kids were really little, we owned our own store. That was when I was really like majorly in product design because I was early in my career, so I didn't have enough of a name to throw around for people to license my products. And so I wanted a fabric line, but I couldn't get a fabric company to license with me. So we just made our own fabric. And so we were working from like we were talking to the factories that wove the fabric. From that point all the way to finished product, we had a hand in it. We had a couple of wholesale companies, and we also had a storefront. So raising children with a storefront is it's a whole nother podcast, I think. Like just they grew up in a store, and we lots of paper goods, fabrics. We had an upholsterer on staff at one point, and we would recover people's old furniture with my fabrics or fabrics and complements, things like that. And that was when I really learned about designing during that time too. But my wife really learned a lot about business, and then she slowly started managing my art career. And so as we grew, and as like our wholesale companies grew and everything, she was sort of taking on that role. And then it was really during that same COVID time when we both had fallen back into education. Very fortunately, got out of small business before COVID, and so we were just at home, and both had jobs in education. When we started back up, I started painting again, and she came home for a little while and just wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And then we realized like she needed to have that ownership of something. And so the gallery that already represented me wanted to open a second location. And Lily jumped in and she opened that second location. And now it's the gallery. We own a couple of frame shops that are also attached to that sort of business model. And but she sort of took off, and like where she had been managing my career, she now helps 47 other Mississippi artists to have careers on their own, which is really cool. So she sort of took the things that she learned from being my wife and having to put up with me all the time, and she ran and gets to do that for other people, which is a really special thing, I think.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's interesting, the parallels. We had a storefront up until my wife got pregnant with her first, and the store was doing so well that we decided to close it because we would lose nothing by closing it, and she would be able to then stay home with our daughter. So, but the storefront was a fabric store, and before we hit record, we were talking about, you have a fabric line with a wholesaler, not produced. I didn't even realize you guys had done all of that work,
Oh, yeah.
going to mills and all that. So tell this tell this story about how the latest fabric line came to be and how wild
Yeah.
that
So,
was.
it's pretty cool. When we closed our storefront, it pretty much like it was not just the storefront. We closed the storefront, we closed the wholesale companies, we just shut down production. We were tired. We'd been doing it for like 6 years. We had two small children. We just were done. And so whenever I got back into my studio, started painting, every product that we started to design and develop, it went through like scrutiny, right? Like we were looking to make sure that we were doing it with the right intentions and we weren't going to fall back into that like full scale production, having to start from picking the thread for the fabric. Like I don't ever want to do that again. Other people can do that. They're way better at it than me. I don't want to think the brain space. I just want to paint stuff and let people do cool stuff with it. So I was in the middle of this huge collection. It was like around 100 pieces that I was doing for this a show, like a weekend show, like a festival. Um, it was in Nashville, and I was really excited about it. I was building up this whole collection, and a lady reached out to me over Instagram and was like, "Hey, you need a fabric line?" And I was like, "Absolutely, I do need a fabric." And she owned a little fabric shop in North Mississippi, and I was like, "Look, I think this is a great idea. I don't know anything about this industry. I mean, I know enough to be dangerous, but like, I don't know the players. I don't know what company I'm the best fit for. I don't know anything about it that I can jump right in. And I am maxed out right now with the show, and I don't have time to look it up. So I was like, so if you want to do a little bit of the legwork, find what company I need to reach out to, do some of the research for me, then sure, I'd love to pitch a fabric company to have my artwork." And she was like, "Okay." This lady, what in the world? Like, we'll see what happens. A couple weeks later, she comes back and she's like, "Done." And she's like, "I messaged the CEO of the company that I love to work with my fabric store, and I told him that you were a great designer from Mississippi and we needed your fabric." And I was like, "Okay, cool. We'll see if anything happens." Like I've sent a million of those messages and emails to like crickets, right? Like nothing will happen from this. Well, a couple of weeks later, I get an email from Free Spirit Fabric, and it was like, "Hey, Adam, we would love for you to design a line with us." And it was like, "Oh my gosh, that lady from West Point just got me this job. This is awesome." And so now it's been awesome. I've been working with them. I started working with them last April. We developed a whole line. It's for sale in 2 fabric stores right now. I think the line comes out in September. And we're already working on another line for 2026. It's super cool to work with companies that know what they're doing, right? Like I've done it where I was the company that was supposed to know what I was doing and I didn't. And so now that I'm like working with this like well-oiled machine, it's like, okay, I see why people do this. This is pretty cool.
Nice. And how many different patterns is it?
I think it's 12. Yeah.
Nice.
It's
Nice.
12 patterns in this first collection. And then I think we're working for something similar for 2026. So
Very cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember as we were a fledgling fabric store, the conversation between my wife and I of like, we really want to buy the full collection. Can we afford to buy the whole collection? Will our customers like the whole collection? Like all of these conversations, because some of them are, 6, 8, 10 uh, designs with 3 colorways. So then it's like, okay, do we get all the colorways? Do we just get one colorway? It's a
I
wild world.
cannot even imagine. I am thankful none of mine have different colorways. They're
Oh, nice.
all, we just made this really beautiful collection that sort of encompasses all of the colors from a couple of like the key pieces. There are great complements that go with those. But yeah, oh, I can't imagine the decisions, because then now
Yeah.
I'm like, that's where my push is on social media about fabric is like, hey, if you're an independent, like if you're a quilter and you have an independent quilt shop that you love, because I love that about Free Spirit, they only sell to independent like fabric stores, no big box. And so I'm like, if you have an independent fabric store you love, tell them you really want my collection. Like, let them know that you will purchase it, right? Like, that will help their decision.
Makes a difference. Because otherwise you're sitting there guessing, like, you know, will they come in? Will people
I
like
hope,
this? Who
I hope
knows?
people will buy this. Yeah.
um, do you think in repeating patterns when you're working on a piece like that? Or because I would assume that not all your work needs to be repeating, but this particular format would.
So one of the things that I love about my work is that I don't overlap elements often.
Mm.
I feel like this is a crowd that will understand. Normally, I probably wouldn't go into this depth whenever I was talking on a podcast, but like I don't overlap elements. And because I don't do that, it makes my work very easy to turn into a repeat. And so I think in repeats, because I'm always thinking like, how can this thing that I'm painting, like this experiment, like I said earlier, that I'm working on this canvas, how can I take elements from this and let it be its own thing? I learned a long time ago that if I'm working on a painting, I probably shouldn't be thinking about the 5 different end games that I have for it. I should really just let it be what it is, because then the work will be better and I'll actually be able to let it have 5 different end games. Because when I plan for the 5 different end games, I'm always disappointed. Like it doesn't turn out the way I want it to. But if I
Mhm.
just go for really good, strong work from the front end, I'm always surprised at what comes out of that. So, yes and no, if
Yep.
that answers your question.
Yeah, totally. Totally does. And um in addition to some of the product stuff that you do you still paint for well, like wall hanging type art, or is it
Yeah.
predominantly product led?
No, absolutely. So like so my work is featured on HGTV pretty often. Some friends of ours have an HGTV show. You probably heard of it, Hometown.
My
Um
dad talks about it all the time.
it's I mean, I feel like that's why it's so successful, because every husband that I know that watches Hometown with their wives just wants to be Ben. And
He loves Ben.
we all would like to be Ben, actually. Like I think that that's fair. And so yeah, it's because my work is seen on Hometown a lot. Actually, prints of my work. That's probably honestly one of my biggest streams of income, because our whole goal with that product line is keeping those prints accessible. And so like the paper prints that I sell through the Laurel Mercantile, which is their store. I mean, the most expensive one is $100. Most of them are 20. Like I love to keep my work open edition and very accessible, because I grew up middle class, like yeah, blue collar middle class, and my mom was an elementary school art teacher, and every day that I would paint or we would talk about art or have conversations about art, she would say, like, I hope you have that career where you're selling that $10,000 painting, but you just need to remember that there's a private school 4th grade teacher that really wants your painting, and we both should be able to have them. Like, and I think that's important, right? Like the goal of my work is to be joyful and for people to see it and love it and enjoy it in their homes. And you shouldn't have to have, 5 figures to be able to purchase an original. Like Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I will sell a painting for $10,000, easy. Like, let's do that, absolutely. But I also want to make sure that, like, that's what I love about product design is you get the opportunity to have the artwork and show the artwork for a $15 a yard bolt of fabric, right? Like, or a $20 print, or a $10 tile. You know, like whatever that looks like for you. Uh, there shouldn't be a huge disparity just because you can't afford an original doesn't mean you don't get to have the work. Like that doesn't make sense to me. So I love the idea and the business model of accessibility. I think it's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a good point. And so your mom was an art teacher. You're now
No, an
painting.
English teacher. Yeah.
An English
I'm
teacher.
no art in this family other than me. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said art. I was going to say, is the heritage being passed down to your girls or?
Well, so my girls, yes, we live in a very creative household, and so it is kind of funny though because there's that whole thing of, and I don't know how this relates to like graphic designers, but for painters especially, or anyone in like the maybe more the traditional mediums of like paint and clay and things like that, when you take what the rest of the world sees as a hobby and turn it into a job, it's hard, right? Like it's hard to turn that off. And so like, do I paint with my kids? Not as much as you probably think, because I just painted, a full 8 hour day. When I come home, I'm probably not really wanting to jump into paint. But they do, we always make sure they have the things that they need to be creative. And I love to jump in with them, like school projects and things like that. I'm always almost to my detriment, maybe like, don't tell me you need a costume for school. Like we're going full tilt. Like I always joke. There's a couple, there's the other dads and moms in our class. I was like, I will die on this hill that lawyer is going to have a better costume than me. Like that's not going to happen today.
Yeah.
So my poor 11-year-old, she just last Christmas I had to make her. Did you hear? I just said that last Christmas, she needed a headpiece for a Christmas play, and it was supposed to have a bird on it. And like everyone else was going out and getting a headband and gluing one of those like the mushroom birds that you put on like wreaths. Very simple. And I was like, nope, sorry, sister. Like we're making a bird. And so she had like this full like wedding dress veil type thing, and she was like, Dad. So we do like I think in our house the biggest thing when it comes to creativity is like being creative, thinking outside the box, and then like absolutely always doing your best. Like that's what's important to me. Like do the work that you can do, and if that's excellence, then that's what we're working towards. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. I think it's similar to the chef who comes home and makes Kraft mac and cheese.
Absolutely.
um, and then from a like balancing work home life, you and your wife had that storefront, chose to close it down. COVID happened. Now you're like back in that world, but not to the same degree. What did you learn from the first time around for setting yourself up for family success as well as career success as you launch back into doing this full time?
Well, I think knowing that we had the support staff to help was huge. When we went through the retail world the first time, we just tried to do everything ourselves. And like, that's the photo of me holding the newborn baby behind the cash register, right? Like, that was the one where it was like, we probably should have taken that extra week off. Like we, the store was just as much a child that we had as the newborn baby that we brought home while we had the store. Um, and now we try really hard to make sure that like we have employees that love our family and like we treat like family. Like I feel like that's important. The community that we have built within our employees and within the guys that work with us, that's really important. Setting up a workplace that has that great flow, but also then knowing that like we can pass off things. I have an assistant who is the most, like I tell her all the time, it's like, if you leave me, like I'm done. I'm just not going to work anymore. I'll go be like a mail carrier because that's probably what I'll be better at than doing this without the help that you bring to the table. And then my wife, the same way, like her staff, they're so attentive, and she knows that she can leave the store and it's not going to burn down. And I think having that in place is the biggest thing that we've changed. And then just also then having older kids has changed a lot about the way that we approach it, because like when we had little kids, like they took a lot of our time, but the time could have been in the shop, right? Like I can't take my 11-year-old to cheerleading and still keep a store open now. Like knowing that I can delegate and help, I think that's probably the biggest work life balance. And then now, like the other thing that we always say, like when you have a retail store, like you got to be open, right? If you're not open, people can't buy from you. And we live in such a digital world now that like that also is not necessarily good. Like our website's open 24 hours a day. And so the thing that we always tell the people that work with us, we're like, there's not an emergency in art. There's just not, like there's nothing that can't wait until tomorrow, right? Like if there's an emergency that you need to handle, go for that, because nothing at our store, in our job, is going to be an emergency. And so because of that, like I might walk out of this studio at 1 o'clock and not come back and not feel bad about it,
Mhm.
because again, like I said earlier, like dad's the job that I love, artist is the job that I enjoy. Like, but the whole point, the whole reason we live in Laurel, Mississippi, is so we could be around our family and be close, have cousins and have the family time that we really wanted. Um, yeah, we just had no idea we would still get to be successful while we did that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to share those things. Two last questions that I ask every guest, and they go a little bit deeper, which are, what has been your greatest parenting success, and what has been your greatest parenting either failure or learning?
Hmm. Greatest parenting success would probably be, it was honestly before we even had kids. Like it was when we made the decision, Lily and I both were living outside of Mississippi. And when we made the decision to move home, to be closer to our families before we even had kids, and then to stay here once we did have kids, knowing that like it could be detrimental to our careers, quote unquote, you know, what is the Jurassic Park quote? Like life will find a way. Like, despite the fact that we stayed in small town Mississippi, we're still getting to do these really cool things. But that decision, like we can go back and pinpoint coming back home and being around our families and having the support system that we needed to raise children, I think was probably one of our biggest, deepest successes. Um, Now, does it get annoying and like having, you know, having a parent that lives 5 minutes from your house? Like, yes, that can be a strain occasionally. We're super fortunate that we're very close with our parents, and it doesn't happen often. But like it's a blessing and a curse, right? Like we all understand that. But I think for the most part, it was really the best. And then greatest, what was the other one?
Failure or learning?
Failure or learning. Um, I think I fail every single day. And maybe that's the greatest failure, is like understanding that I do that. I think my greatest failure is I do expect a lot from my kids. And I think the thing that I continue to learn from my kids is that they always show me grace, and how important it is for me to reciprocate that, right? Like, I am not a perfect dad. And so I appreciate when they like either call me out on it, or, and then forgive me anyway. And so it's doing the same for them. Yeah. And making sure that, like, learning constantly that like they're little people, like they are going to grow up and be big people and have great thoughts and ideas and jobs and all the things that I've done. They're going to have that too. And so like giving them grace is a thing that I'm learning constantly, because they got to figure it out just like we're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Well, Adam, thank you for coming on. And if folks wanted to find your work, buy your goods, all that kind of stuff, where can they do that?
So like the best place probably is my website, just adamtrest.com. It's a great sort of launch page that goes to the different licensing things that I'm working on. It's a great place for prints and all of the things. And then my Instagram is a great place, just at Adam Trest. It's a great place for behind the scenes. You might see those crazy children that I have and love dearly. They show up often and always get more likes than my artwork, and that drives me crazy too. People obviously follow me to see the children and not the artwork, and I love that.
It's so true. So true. Well, yeah, thanks again for coming online. If you are listening to this, also know that there is a YouTube version where you can see some of the stuff that we talked about of Adam's work. And yeah, thanks again for coming on.